It's 8:30 at night, and I'm lying in my 4-year-old's bed because this is what happens with bedtime as a parent. And he's decided tonight I'm not his mom. He's Spider-Man. I'm Ghost Spider. And we're having a sleepover at Spider-Man's house. It's very elaborate. And at some point, I think he's just tricking me into staying up later because his bedtime is really like 7:30. But then my phone buzzes. And I look because I'm really bad at boundaries, and that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But the message I see from Slack is, yo, we're logging out all tenant config secrets in plain text in prod. Not internal secrets, not a dev environment, not staging, all of the secrets. Production, tenant configuration in plain text in the logs. So at this point, I'd rather be Ghost Spider with my kid, but I reluctantly got out of bed. I told Spidey that Ghost Spider had to go catch Rhino. And he accepted this because 4-year-olds understand that being a superhero is tough work. And isn't that what being on call is? Welcome back to Chaotic Commits. I'm Joanne, honest stories of building in modern tech. Today's episode is called Raise E, the line that logged everything. And if you've written Python for any length of time, you already know where this is going. And if you haven't, I'm going to explain it in a way that makes you feel what it's like to find it at 8:30 p.m. in a child's bedroom while pretending to be a superhero. I want to talk about a few things today. The technical story, because this is actually a good one. The runbook you're writing in real time when this happens, because it's nothing like the runbook in the documentation. And the part nobody talks about enough, which is what you log, why, and what it means that what you log is not usually treated as an architectural decision, even though it absolutely is. So, with that said, let's get into it. Here's the thing about Raise E. It's not a bug. It's valid Python. It does exactly what it says. It re-raises the current exception. And when you re-raise an exception in Python, the full exception object comes with it. The stack trace, the context, everything the interpreter was holding when the error occurred. The problem is that everything is doing a lot of work in that sentence. If the object that triggered the exception contains sensitive data, that data is now part of the exception. And if you're logging exceptions, which you absolutely should be, and every production system should be, that data is now in your logs, all of it, in plain text, faithfully recorded by your logging pipeline, which is just doing its job. In our case, the object was a tenant configuration model, and the tenant configuration is exactly what it sounds like. It's the settings for your customer. API keys, credentials, integration secrets, the stuff that if someone has it, they can do things as your customer. Not similar things, the actual things. The Raise E had been in the codebase for a very, very, very long time. Not because someone was careless, because in most code paths, it never hit the configuration object. It just re-raised a routine exception and moved on, and nobody noticed anything wrong because nothing was wrong. The logging was doing what it was supposed to do. But then, 2 days before this 8:30 message, we deployed a new configuration feature. And the new configuration feature changed which code paths got executed during error conditions. Specifically, it changed which code paths hit that Raise E. And suddenly, a thing that has been technically present in the code for I don't even know how long started actually triggering. Every exception from that path was now dumping the entire config object to the log. This is the part that keeps a lot of engineers up at night, and not really figuratively. The bug was always there. It was just an extremely patient bug. It was waiting for the right set of conditions, and the right set of conditions arrived 2 days before I was lying in my 4-year-old's bed. The question I had to ask in the first 5 minutes was not what broke. The question was, how long has this been running? And honestly, that's a very different question, and it is worse. I want to walk through what the next 20 minutes actually looked like, because there is, honestly, after I wrote up the incident report, it sounded very clean in retrospect. But there's also the version that sounds like what it was, because it was not clean. The first thing you have to do is confirm. You don't assume the worst from one message. You have to pull logs. You have to verify. You find the first timestamp where the secret appears. You try to figure out whether this is a single event or a pattern. In our case, it was a pattern. Every exception from that code path since the new config feature deployed. 2 days of logs. Everything. The second thing you do is tell your team. Not because you need help confirming it, you've already confirmed it, but because you're about to make decisions under pressure. And the decisions made alone at 8:30 p.m. are honestly the worst decisions. You need someone else to be present for what's coming. And then the third thing you do is resist the urge to immediately fix and deploy, because that urge is really strong, because something is really wrong. And your whole being wants to make it stop being wrong. But a hotfix deployed under pressure without clear understanding of the fix is how you create the next incident. And we have living proof of that. The configuration feature that caused this problem had itself actually been deployed quickly as a hotfix 2 days earlier after a different incident. Because 2 days ago something went wrong. We moved fast to fix it, but the fix introduced a new code path. The new code path hit the raise E, and that had been sitting quietly in the code base. And now we're here. Speed got us here. Speed is not going to get us out of here. The fix itself, once we identified it, was really not that complicated. You just stop logging the raw exception object. You log a sanitized version. You make sure the configuration model has a dunder repr. That's a double underscore repr, or a double underscore string, and that returns something safe, not the entire object. You add a test that would catch this class of error in the future, and you fix and deploy to staging. You verify, you cut the hotfix. That part took probably a few hours. It really wasn't the hard part. But here's the part that is underdocumented, and I really do mean this. I could not find a clear runbook for this when I needed it. I have talked to engineers who went through similar incidents, and they figured it out under pressure the same way we did. That is, when secrets appear in production logs, you do not have an engineering problem. You have a data handling problem. Depending on your compliance posture, the industry you're in, and the nature of secrets, you might have a reportable incident, and therefore you have an obligation. And those obligations have timelines. So when someone says, can we scrub the logs? That might sound simple, but it really isn't. Logs in production systems are not a single thing. They are in your log aggregator. They're probably in a SIEM. They may be in a long-term retention storage, in compliance archives, in monitoring pipelines that have already exported them somewhere else. So scrubbing logs means figuring out every place those logs landed and taking appropriate action in each of them. Some of those systems have APIs for deletion, and some of them have retention policies that make deletions complicated. Some of them require you to open a support ticket with a vendor. And some of them honestly require you to accept that the data exists and focus on everything else. So this is not a conversation you want to be having for the first time at 10 p.m. during an active incident. What I would tell you from the other side of this, before you have an incident, you probably should know where your logs go, all of them. Know who owns each destination, know what your deletion or scrubbing options are in each system, know whether you have a compliance obligation to notify anyone if production secrets are exposed in logs, and then if so, what is the window to notify? That is a lot of the advice that always sounds obvious after the fact, and it is. It was obvious to me at 10 p.m. during the incident too. It just wasn't written down anywhere I could find at 10 p.m. during the incident. The other piece of compliance conversations is rotation. Rotating secrets is not optional when this happens. If the secrets were in the logs, you have to treat them as potentially compromised, even if you don't have evidence of the access. And that is standard. And rotating secrets sounds straightforward until you remember that secrets are integrated. They're embedded in customer workflows. They authenticate integrations. Rotating them incorrectly or too fast or without communicating clearly can break things for your customers, who are already really not that happy with you because this might be the second incident in 2 days. So we decided to rotate the next morning, not because we were comfortable waiting, but because a middle of the night rotation done badly is worse than a morning rotation done carefully. We spent the rest of the night building the plan. So let's pull back from the incident story for a minute. And I need to say something that it deserves its own space. What your system logs is an architectural decision. And I know that sounds obvious. I know that most engineers would nod at that sentence and agree with it. But I also know, in practice, logging is often treated as a default, a thing that happens rather than a thing that is decided. You had it logging when you were debugging. You log the exception because of course you log the exception. You log the object because you might need that later. And at no point does anyone ask, what is this object? Is there a version of this object that is safe to log? Who reads these logs? Where do they go? Hey, what's our retention policy? Those are not debugging questions. Those are architectural questions. And if they are not being asked explicitly, they're being answered implicitly by whoever writes the logging statement, which is often a developer at 2 a.m. trying to figure out why something is broken. The RAISE did not appear in the code base because someone made a bad decision. It appeared because someone needed to propagate an exception, and that is the standard way to do it. Logging did not exist because someone decided to log tenant secrets. It existed because logging exceptions is correct and important, and you should absolutely do it. The gap was in the model. The configuration object had no concept of what was safe to expose. There was no dunder repr that returned a sanitized version. There was no logging middleware that stripped sensitive fields. There was no test that would have caught this exception exposes a secret. Those things were not missing because of carelessness. They were missing because no one had explicitly decided that what the configuration object looks like in a log was a thing that needed to be decided. An observable system is a system you can understand from the outside without breaking it open. And believe me, that is extremely valuable and it's extremely necessary. But observability is not the same as transparency with no limits. What you expose in logs should be a deliberate choice, not a side effect of how Python handles exceptions. The fix we shipped was small. a few lines. But the conversation behind the fix was not small at all. It was about what data we were comfortable having in logs at all, about what our models should look like when they appear in error output, about what tests would catch this class of problem in the future, and about what safe to log means as a property, not just a practice. That conversation should have happened way before the incident. That's always true, and I know it. But the least I can do is say it out loud so that maybe someone else has it before it's theirs. So what is the point of the story? The bug was always there. It didn't care. I mean, because bugs don't actually care, they're just pieces of code, but let's move on with that. It was waiting for the right conditions, and the right conditions arrived. You cannot write code that has no latent RAID anywhere. That's not a realistic target. What you can do is think about what your objects look like when they appear in an error, what your logging pipeline is actually recording. Whether anyone has ever asked the question, if this exception gets logged, what goes in the log? And is that okay? If the answer is, I don't know, that's worth knowing right now. The other thing I want to say is about compounding. 2 incidents in 2 days is not bad luck. It is a signal. The first incident changes the condition. The fix for the first incident changes the code paths. The changed code paths triggered the second incident. This is how incidents compound. Not because your team is bad at fixing things, but because fixing things under pressure in production is hard, and sometimes the fix has edges you didn't see. The solution is not to move slower in general. It is to understand what you're changing and why before you change it. A hot fix should be a minimum viable change to make the immediate problem stop, not a refactor, not a new feature, not an improvement. The thing that stops the bleeding. Everything else gets scheduled. What you log is a decision. Own it before someone else finds it. That's this episode of Chaotic Commits. I'm Joanne. New episodes wherever you get podcasts. I'll see you there.